Welcome to St. Paul Evangelical Lutheran Church in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, this Saturday, July 9th. This is a prayer for guidance. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. O my God, in you I trust. Do not let me be put to shame. Do not let my enemies exult over me. Do not let those who wait for you to be put to shame. Let them be ashamed who are wantonly treacherous. Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all day long. Be mindful of your mercy, O Lord, and of your steadfast love, for they have been from of old. Do not remember the sins of my youth or my transgressions. According to your steadfast love, remember me, for your goodness' sake, O Lord. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore he instructs sinners in their ways. He leads the humble in what is right, and he teaches the humble his way, and teaches us all the paths. All the paths of the Lord are steadfast love and faithfulness for those who keep his covenant and his decrees. Amen. This was from Psalm 25, and it was verses 1 to 10. The next reading is going to be from Leviticus 19, Ritual and Moral Holiness. And this was actually written before Moses took the Israelites into the Promised Land. But it applies to us still today. Parts of it, yes, are reflected on what was happening in their time. But the code of humanity is reiterated in this to help as they were going into the new land to move away from their paganism and their worship of false gods. So let's read this with an open mind. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, and Moses then delivered this to his people. Speak to all the congregation of the Israelites and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. It means apart. Holy here means apart. Stand apart from the others. Do what I am asking you to do. Be as I am within you. You shall revere your mother and father, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to the idols or make cast images for yourself. I am the Lord your God. Again, honor your father and your mother. That is the basis of all humanity, is it not? Family. And whether it's the family within our household or our church family, honor thy mother and thy father. Keep them in respect. Learn from them. And keep my Sabbath. God gives us all of the time. 7 days a week he has taught us. We can work and do whatever and fill those days. But on that seventh day, we are to rest. And during that rest is when we come together as family, when we share, when we reflect. It's the day that we make our bodies rejuvenated. And as you can see, I haven't done that well, and so I'm recovering because I drove myself too long and too hard for too many days. And now it will take me longer to recover, but I am recovering. When you offer a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, offer it in such a way that it is acceptable on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the same day you offer it, or on the next day, and anything left over until the third day shall be consumed in fire. If any of it is eaten on the third day, it is an abomination. It will not be acceptable, and all who eat it will be subject to punishment, because they have profaned what is holy to the Lord, and any such person shall be cut off from their people. When you make a consecrated meal, and you share that, it's to be consumed that day or the following day, because after that, it loses its reverence. It loses the importance of the fact that it was made and dedicated in God's name. And that means that whatever we're doing, not just making a meal, but what we're sharing together, we take that, we give that in honor to God. And that's what makes it so special, so that we don't take it for granted. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You should not strip your vineyards bare, or gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the aliens. I am the Lord your God. Here again, he's showing us. Now, we no longer farm our own land. We get our food and wine and things from different sources. But it's telling us, do not take everything just because it's available to us. And it is our responsibility to share the extra, the abundance with the poor and with the foreigners, the aliens. We have all been foreigners at one time. So remember this. And it was through God's grace that we have what we have. And so we don't have to take every last item, every last thing that's on the shelf, do we? We take what we need and we leave for others. And you shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely, and you shall not lie to one another, and you shall not swear falsely by my name, profaning the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely. In other words, we should not take advantage of someone else either, because that is dealing against God. That is just the same as stealing. You should not lie to one another. It's important that we keep our hearts pure and we try to deal in faith. And profaning in the name of the Lord does not mean just cursing. It means testifying something under oath that's not true. That's as bad as a lie. That's worse than a lie. That is a sin. That's profaning against God, because you've taken this oath in his name and yet you're swearing unjustly. You shall not defraud your neighbor. You shall not steal, and you shall not keep for yourself the wages of a laborer until morning. You shall not revile the deaf, or put a stumbling block before the blind. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord. So deal honestly. Don't steal from anyone. And don't keep what is not yours longer than you need to. Be upfront, be forthright. Do not revile the deaf. And how many times have you seen people mocking the deaf or treating them as though they're stupid? They're not. And don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind. How bad is that? Whether it be withholding access to benefits for them, that's the same as putting a stumbling block in front of them. We have to deal humanely with each other. Deal from the heart. You shall not render an unjust statement. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. With justice you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not stand idly by when the blood of your neighbor is at stake. I am the Lord. Here, this is just important because he reminds us that we don't just take for granted that the poor is always the person that is not at fault, and that those who are wealthy are at fault. And when it comes to justice, when something has been done, when the law has been broken, and a crime is done against anyone, wealthy or poor, do injustice with an open heart and an open mind. Look at what has happened and then put the judgment against the person that was at fault, whether it was the poor person or the wealthy. The wealthy does not get the benefit of the doubt, nor is the poor person always the one at fault either, or vice versa. So we have to judge as God would judge, truthfully, looking at all the facts. Do not slander another person. Do not say idle things about people that are not true, or embellish on them. And especially when the life of someone is at stake, you have an obligation to speak. If you know the truth, you need to say it, not stand idly by and let judgment not happen or the wrong judgment happen. You have the responsibility of speaking, and you must do that. You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, and you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am your Lord. Here again, when we hold a grudge or we hold hate for someone in our heart, it doesn't do us any good. We are hurting ourselves more than we're hurting that other person. It's with God's love and grace that He loves us, and He asks, and we have to ask Him for forgiveness all the time. How much more is it our responsibility to forgive, to love, to try to understand? We don't know that other person's circumstance. We don't know their situation. And for us to hold a grudge or to hate that person only will hurt ourselves. That negative space in our heart is an area where we can decay and rot from within. We have to trust in God's love. Turn it over to God, forgive, and ask for their forgiveness. You shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your animals breed from a different kind. You shall not sow your fields with two kinds of seed, nor shall you put a garment made of two different materials. Again, this reflects back to the times and the whether or not to wear a scarf, those kinds of our traditional garb, those were the things of the day that were being addressed here. So you were to keep yourself pure and all that was around you pure. Today, we, of course, dress with many different materials and things, but it's a different time. It didn't mean that we were shunning God's rule or that we were listening to pagan traditions or anything like that. The next one, if a man has sexual relations with a woman who is a slave, designated for another man, but not ransomed or given her freedom, an inquiry shall be held. They shall not be put to death, since she had not been freed, but he shall bring a guilt offering for himself to the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram as guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him with a ram of guilt offering before the Lord for a sin that he committed, and the sin he committed shall be forgiven. This reflects back to a time of slavery, and when the owner or the person that raped the woman who was a slave, and she was betrothed to another person, that ram was given as the price of penance to the person that was the betrothed. And the person that did the injustice was then to marry the slave. And the woman was left without guilt because she had no power to make any difference in that transition. And this, again, was reflective of the times. When you come into the land and plant any kinds of trees for food, then you shall regard their fruit as forbidden 3 years. It shall be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. In the 4th year all the fruit shall be set apart for rejoicing in the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat their fruit, and their yield may be increased for you. I am the Lord your God. Now remember, they're going into a new land that they have no history with. And so this was the Lord's way of saying, save those fruits. Let them mature. Let those trees grow in strength. Do not strip them bare. Keep that without eating that for 3 years. The 4th year you may harvest, but it's in celebration and dedicated to the Lord. And the 5th year you then can eat of this fruit. This was a way of making sure that the tree had strength, that he was giving them instruction on how to go into this new place so that they knew how to live with the land and how it would bring forth more abundance for them when they did this. You shall not eat anything with its blood. You shall not practice augury or witchcraft. You should not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. You shall not make any gashes in your flesh for the dead or tattoo any marks upon you. I am the Lord. Again, reflecting back to the time, there were blood sacrifices made to the gods. You shall not practice augury or witchcraft. Many times it was witchcraft that they would use to curse someone else. Or you shall not round off your hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. Again, this was done because some of the rituals were to cut the locks that the Orthodox had and to trim the beards in reference to these new pagan gods and idols. So this was what God was saying. And as for the flesh for the dead, they actually bled blood that would be used at the death ceremony. These were all pagan rituals, and tattoos upon you were tattoos because they would tattoo themselves as a slave to a deity or a god, that they were dedicating themselves to that god or that idol. And God said, no, you should not do that anymore. You consecrate your body to me. There are no tattoos to be needed. You clear your heart and your mind for the Lord. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute, that the land not become prostituted and full of depravity. You shall keep my Sabbaths and revere my sanctuary. I am the Lord. It was a tradition at this time in many of the cultures that the father would prostitute the daughter in order to gain money when she was betrothed to be given to the other family. And this was something God was saying, no, this is not right. You give your daughter in my blessing. You do not defile her body or make her unclean. This is not an acceptable practice. Do not turn to mediums and spiritualists. Do not seek them out to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Many people, even today, go and get their fortunes told and things. And it's so strange that we still have these practices because God's the only one that knows what his plan is for us. And if we are open to him and listening to him, we don't stumble and fall, and we don't fall into false paths that waste our time, our energy. It's very hard to spend enough time reflecting and talking with God and opening our hearts and our minds, that God can be more active in showing us the way to go and what to do. When an alien resides, you shall rise before the aged and defer to the old, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. Again, reference for our older generations. I am so sorry. I remember how exuberant I was in my youth and how I was going to change the world. And many times I wasn't as in touch with God. And I took wrong paths and I got angry with him. And I should have been getting angry with myself, but I wasn't grounded enough in my faith. And I didn't have the older people in my life that I should have been listening to. I wasn't as close or open to them. They were taken away from me when I was fairly young. My father died in his late 40s, and he was my mentor, and he helped guide me, along with, of course, the church, but he helped to give me balance. And when he was taken, I was so angry with God that I turned away. I felt like he had left me, that it was wrong to do that. And if I had only had someone to help me find my way, it took many, many years before I ever found my way back. And yet God was with me the whole time. I just was not open to his presence. And it happens so many times in our lives as we struggle with life and death and turmoil and uncertainty. But when we see the sun shining and we see things getting green and growing and new birth and new life, I am brought back to the fact that God is always present. And it's up to us to ask him for his peace, his love, our forgiveness. When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the alien. The alien who resides with you shall be as the native born among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for we are all aliens, and we were all aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. A reminder to all of us that we are all aliens on this planet. We all came from somewhere else at some time. We're a blend of many, many things that have happened over many, many, many centuries. And we tend to forget that. And so when we're dealing with, whether it's the Mexicans at our borders or the Afghanis that are coming in, we have to deal with them with an open heart. It's God who has put us all here. We are all receiving his blood, his blessing, his grace. And so we have to remember that, and we have to do what is right and how we treat each other, whether we be a foreigner or whether we be a neighbor, or whether we be a friend, or whether we even be someone that we see as an enemy. We ask God for help in our heart to deal with these things so that we can be more just in what we do here in the wealthiest nation. How do we treat each other? Do we really lift each other up, or do we oppress those who are different? You shall not cheat in measuring length, weight, or quantity. You shall have honest balance, honest weights, honest ephraim, and an honest hin. I am the Lord. Do not short anyone, whether it be of money, short them in housing, short them in access to food, clothing. We have the responsibility to make things right when we see a wrong. It is God's message to us and has been over the millennium. He has given us all under our judgment, our care, our stewardship. How well are we doing? I think we have a long way to go, don't we? And the hardest thing to do is keep an open mind and an open heart. I'm reading from Prayers for Healing today. This is from God. Offer only lovely things on my altars, the bread of life, and jewels, and feathers, and flowers, that the streams of life flow in peace. Turn from violence. Learn to think for a long time how to change this world, how to make it better to live in. All the people in the world ought to talk about it and speak well of it always. Then it will last forever, and the flowers will bloom forever, and I will come to you again. This is a writing by Quetzalcoatl in a book of Prayers for Healing. So, my friends, reflect on the things that we have read today, but know above all else that God loves you And through the life and blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, we are giving the hope, and through God's grace, the will and right to help, to be a better person, to love and serve the Lord in all we do. So go in peace and have a wonderful week.